So I feel like I haven't been taking enough responsibility as a host lately. So I insisted today that I would introduce this episode of Informed Dissent. And after I insisted, both Ben and Eliza decided, well, if you're doing that, no, I'm kidding. Ben and Eliza won't be joining us today, but I am Corey Cohn. I'm normally introduced as a disenchanted transsexual, but what I am is a man who's undergone this medicalization process for no good reason. And I'm here today with my two normal co-hosts. I'll introduce Lisa Sullen Davis first because she's closest to me on the monitor here. She is a prolific writer and has been covering gender issues almost exclusively for the past 6 or 7 years. She's working on a forthcoming book, but recently she published Housewives, which I have on my shelf over there, but I will not go grab. Also today, our normal co-host, Jamie Reed. She is a brave whistleblower who's been flying around the country trying to help children and families avoid harm from whatever this process is. And welcome to Informed Dissent.
Thank you, Corey. That was nice.
Well, thank you.
That was really nice.
All right.
Do you know any of the headlines from this week?
Yes. Let's start with, I don't have the headlines in front of me. I know that there's two things that the Trump administration is working on that are interesting to me. One is that the Federal Trade Commission is going to be pulling together a panel of experts to talk about to discuss, I don't know whether or not, I don't know if they're coming in with this assumption already, but looking into deceptive practices in the gender care industry. So do we have some information on that? That's one of the correct headlines, isn't it?
That is one of the correct headlines, yes.
All right. So do we have more on that?
Been released about that. I know that it's been difficult, and we've talked about this before, but it's difficult to catalog the harms of these medications when the side effects or adverse effects are the point. And that there was when Jamie and I were at the American Academy of Pediatrics conference, what year was that? 20?
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I guess it was 23, maybe. I talked to somebody from the FDA, which is obviously not the same thing, but that because we were there with a bunch of detransitioners, and he said you should report these as adverse events. You should, and so I think some people have done that. So one thing that can be looked at during this event is actually cataloging the harms. And I think that's part of, yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Well, I attempted to do that a few times while I worked in a gender center, and I was told they're not adverse events because they're known, they're expected, and they are part of the normalized protocol, that they just happen, that those are the things that, like you said, the harms are the desires.
Well, surely if somebody's getting blood clots, that's not one of the desires, right? If somebody is losing their voice because the testosterone caused not just a deepening of the voice, but caused tissue accumulation to cause a cracked voice, that's not a desired effect. But a deepening voice would be. Facial hair in a woman who's taking testosterone, that's not an adverse effect, right? For the person who desires that, but nevertheless there could be adverse effects like the pelvic floor
Dysfunction.
Right. So how do we clearly one viewpoint would be women should not have facial hair growth. That's an adverse effect. But I think we would argue over that potentially. However, more serious medical side effects probably we would consider adverse. So how do we distinguish between those?
Well, that's a question that no one has asked really, because there are so few people cataloging the costs and insisting on the life-saving, evidence-based, and medically necessary. And certainly each of those claims I don't think holds up in the face of evidence. So if they're going to look at deceptive practices, those particular claims can be pushed back on. But I wonder how it is a deceptive practice if we're asking kids about their embodiment goals, and if we're also telling them that they're going to be their authentic selves. So even if there are these side effects, unwanted side effects of vaginal atrophy, or effects on your voice that you didn't want, how do you prove that you were deceived if you didn't get to connect or bear your authentic self via medical intervention?
I think the deception in this practice goes all the way back to the very start at the first visit, though. I think part of what is deceptive to the parents is that they believe that a differential diagnosis is occurring, and it is not. So I believe that there are many parents who bring their children to these centers thinking that their child is actually going to be diagnosed with this thing that needs these treatments. And I think that part of the deception is that there is no diagnostic differential. The other thing that I found deceptive was that I think if you go to a lot of these websites that tout, we have a center, they're claiming this is a multidisciplinary center. Okay, well, what does that mean? Is there transparency on the back end if there's 8 people on the team and 4 don't agree? Are they telling the parents that? I don't think we told a single parent ever, we saw your child and 3 people of the team don't believe your child should be medicalized. I think that's deceptive if they thought that their child was being assessed by a multidisciplinary team and that was just simply overridden. Am I? And I think the websites also kind of tout that this is like, oh, the website acts like we're going to support your child when they get their hair cut and their social transition. And it doesn't lay claim to 80% of the kids that come to this center end up medicalized on the other end. I think those are deceptive practices in what's being sold to the parents.
Well, who's doing the deceiving? Is it the companies that manufacture the drugs? Is it the doctors? Is it the therapists? Like in some of these cases, when we're talking about the surgical interventions, most of those surgeons are not making any sort of assessment. Somebody else writes a letter that says this patient needs this procedure. Like what is the source of the deception?
We need a lawyer.
Well,
what about a 1-year 1L dropout?
Okay, so where's the deception, Corey? Is there deception?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like, if the FTC is doing a program on this, I imagine at minimum, right? Let's talk about the thing that we would have the most confidence in addressing as something that's deceptive, which is that puberty blockers are supposed to give children time to think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess there are 2 things that we could look at from that, starting at that point. One is, to what extent do the pharmaceutical companies understand or have knowledge that their products are being used for this off-label treatment. And to the extent that they have knowledge about it, to what extent are they reactive or responsible for these usages? And then the other is, what about the doctors that are prescribing them, right? So I guess you have two related but distinct parties that you would investigate, groups of parties that you would investigate for deceptive practices. Just on that question.
The companies manufacturing puberty blockers sure as hell know, because they know how many of their products were being utilized or prescribed 20 years ago when it was purely for smaller cohorts of precocious puberty children versus where they're at now. They know.
How much do they know?
You are asking.
We don't know what they know.
Well, you're asking me to disclose this. So I actually do have a question for this, just kind of our podcast in general. I think it's really interesting that we cover the gender culture war, but we're also like actors in it. Like, we're going to talk about the MIT event, but two of us were there. I think there's this interesting, like, are we making some of the news too? Because the question you just asked about puberty blockers, I can't answer you because I know things that I can't disclose.
Oh.
She could tell us, but then she'd have to kill us. I also want to point out that, that amazing animated video from Planned Parenthood directed at teens and tweens that said, if you're feeling uncomfortable in your body, during the process of puberty, you might be transgender and need puberty blockers. Don't quote me on that, but we'll link to that, which was just an incredible, talk about, that seems like a deceptive marketing practice to me.
Who doesn't have discomfort during puberty?
And some of us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. I think beautiful people probably don't.
Beautiful people don't? I don't know.
Yeah, like supermodels and
I was gonna be like,
jocks.
Lisa's beautiful.
No, I mean
they still do.
You're both beautiful. I mean the otherworldly people, the top 1% of the 1% people.
They do have all kinds of problems. I remember, in terms of all kinds of body issues. I remember interviewing someone for the Tomboy book who had done all these workshops about gender in rural Ontario. And she had found that even the most gender non-conforming people had all of this different kind of discomfort, and that the super jocks were worried that their knees were too girly. And
what?
Yeah. And that everybody seemed to have some feeling of failure related to this topic. Live sneeze on camera. And the trick, of course, is to just say hello to that feeling and move on with your day and not ruminate on it, not need to medicate it.
Yeah.
So
what was other news elements? So we have this meeting that's going to come out. So we will cover that when it occurs.
Yeah, there's another thing that the Trump administration is working on, which is to eliminate certain procedures and treatments from coverage from Medicare.
Medicaid. And possibly ACA plans as well.
Medicaid is for the poor and Medicare is for the old, right?
Yeah, I guess
Poor
geriatric
and
patients don't
disabled.
need puberty blockers.
Well, once you're on Social Security for a disability for long enough, I believe it's 24, maybe 36 months, then you also are able to get Medicare with your Medicaid, often. But um, yes. And then the other thing, the other individuals who are on Medicare, anyone who's in the foster care system or who is adopted out of the foster care system in most states remain on Medicaid all the way up until either 18, or if some of the Chafee kids, I believe, go up to 21. So there's a lot of people who are on Medicaid who will be affected by this, because we also see that high crossover for those young people who are identifying as trans.
In the foster care, which is a whole other thing.
Yes.
So I
In
just reading from NBC News, where Joe Yurkaba writes unbiased, fact-based reporting. The bill
Oh,
would,
that's new.
yeah, no, I just, the bill
Oh,
initially would have prohibited Medicaid from covering quote unquote gender transition procedures for minors, including puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgery. However, House Republican leadership introduced an amendment late Wednesday that struck the word minors and the word 18 years of age from that section, meaning Medicaid is not covering sex change surgeries / gender affirming care / sex trait modification for anyone.
Correct.
what would that mean for somebody like me who's had certain procedures and now needs something to replace the lack of gonads?
So question first is, are you on Medicaid?
No, but
We're
I could be.
if he
You
were,
could.
If I got badly counseled enough, I could be.
Okay, so here's where the next issue comes in. So then it comes down to, is the provider coding your care in what way and or correctly? So the coding for your care, Corey, should be that you have a deficiency because you do not have the body ability to produce those necessary hormones.
Yeah,
Your care should not be coded as gender related care.
I think it is now, though.
So this becomes a question of, how is it being coded? And do we give providers enough information on how to code these things so that they make sense?
Hmm.
So then the question becomes, are we going to see individuals who are receiving these interventions based on their gender? And is it going to be that they just change the coding and they start manipulating and lying about codes? So this still has to go through the Senate and then Trump has to sign it. But he named it his big, beautiful bill, I believe.
Hmm.
So I think it means he wants to sign it.
yeah.
I like that our president has the mindset of a kindergarten teacher.
Do you like that?
I don't think I do, actually. Now that I said that out loud, now it sounds horrifying.
So the interesting thing about, this move and I'm sure the horror on the part of some people about the decision to not cover these interventions is that, this is our only, full government funded healthcare, federally funded healthcare. And we often talk about why some European countries, definitely not all, have pulled back on these treatments, especially for minors. And it's, for many of them, we believe it's because the citizens are paying for the healthcare and they have a fiduciary duty to review the evidence. And if the evidence is poor and some people are getting hurt, they cannot justify charging everybody for this. And so what I find fascinating, and we generally don't have that here, right? This is a mostly private sector and it's about profit and it's much harder to rein in. But in 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services issued this decision about gender dysphoria and gender reassignment surgery that at the time said, we received a complete formal request to make a national coverage determination. And ultimately, they decided that, let's see, the local Medicare administrative contractors, they had been deciding it on a case-by-case basis. And there wasn't enough good evidence to make a decision, but it says CMS encourages robust clinical studies that will fill the evidence gaps and help inform patients which patients are most likely to achieve improved health outcomes, blah, 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 blah. So they declined to uniformly cover everything. And one of the things they said was because the quality of the research was so bad, the results were inconsistent, but negative in the best studies. In other words, in the highest quality studies, the outcomes were not good. Those that reduced confounding by testing patients prior to and after surgery, in other words, that didn't just do retrospective studies or anonymous surveys, that those were the ones that showed worse outcomes. So they kind of have every right to not fund any of this.
Yeah, based on that, yeah. Okay,
Based on that, why should taxpayers be paying for something which is of very low quality evidence, and the high quality evidence shows negative results?
Sorry, this is a dumb question. Who was the president in 2016?
Well, that was the beginning of Donald Trump, but this
study was probably commissioned.
This happened under Obama. I believe this happened under Obama.
2016 would have been Barack Obama.
Okay, so Medicaid does this review in 2016, and we're now at 2025, and we still have no better studies or evidence. And the one that the NIH funded with Olson Kennedy, she refuses to publish.
Well, but the one that there's a paper that we refer to as the Chen paper, which we'll link to, which is the one in that same cohort where 2 out of the 315 committed suicide, and they just wiped those kids from the data. So it all would have been that, which was prospective, higher quality research. The results would have been terrible if they'd included the people who took their own lives.
So if the Medicaid coverage is removed, I had a number of individuals on Twitter ask me what I thought that means for private insurance. Do we have a sense that private insurers kind of base their coverage determinations on what they're kind of required to cover based on Medicaid, Medicare. They go above and beyond, but any sense of what they're going to do with that?
I would think because their goal is to maximize profit, that if they want it, maybe this provides an off ramp for those who want to stop. But if it's still making money for the others, they don't have to. I'm thinking about that. Just reminded me that I see a lot of people saying that, the corporations pulling out of pride and that kind of thing, that they're bowing to the Trump administration. But what I think is probably some of them are like, thank God, I wanted to get off this train, and I had no way to do it because we get yelled at, on social media, or people boycott us, etc. And I'm wondering how to differentiate between those who are taking the off ramp and those who are bowing to pressure. And certainly, my bank wishing me happy Pride, or as I pointed out to you guys, when I went into the settings of Microsoft Word to change something, it offered me Pride mode, which was some kind of rainbow color scheme that you can turn on in Microsoft Office. And I don't think, maybe it's different because I think there are a lot of trans software engineers, but I don't think the bank was wishing me happy Pride for any other reason than caving to different kinds of pressure. So,
it's mostly internal pressure.
You think so?
Yeah, it's all the employees.
But also the culture changed, and it felt like there was this. I mean, I remember one day during the pandemic when we were all supposed to put the black squares on our Instagram, and I had posted something about my book, and somebody said, you got to take that down and put the black square up. I was like, all right, I'll do.
Did you do it?
Yeah, I did it.
Oh, you're a black square person.
Well, I was.
Did you, Jamie?
I knew that the world wasn't as good, bad, left, right, black, white as I thought.
Did I? I had no social media until 2023 or 2020. I think 2023.
Yeah.
I had none. I had no Facebook. I had none of it.
How was your life? Were you happier?
Oh, damn. I don't know. I when I first joined Facebook, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, I was shell-shocked over what it thought it should give me as the algorithmic choices. Because it was trying to figure me out at first, and it kept sending me chickens in costumes who were dancing. And I was so utterly confused. Why did it think that I liked costumed chickens dancing?
Did it think you were a furry?
I don't know what it thought. I think it's begun to figure me out a little bit better now because it knows that what I actually like is dermatological surgery videos.
Oh.
What kind?
Zit
Dermatological?
Dermatological.
Yes.
So,
I mean,
so this is where they cut people's skin off of their body?
well, they cut open cysts and remove growths and things like that. Yeah. If I had to pick which subspecialty, I mean, it was always infectious disease, then dermatology, then endocrinology. Blah. Hormones are boring. You can't see anything.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
can see the adverse / desired effects.
Yeah, that you can
show
see.
up.
But no, I mean, in case of a zombie apocalypse, oh, bring me all of your boils and everything that needs to be cut open on your skin. I'm all about it. I'm not a doctor. But that's what gets to happen in zombie apocalypses. Because the
Boils?
people, yeah, well, and also the people that didn't get to go to med school get to set up their own little, yeah, derm
Beer
surgery.
boils.
Yes. I
But
think we should
okay.
go, Lisa.
No,
I
I
was
was
going
going
to
to
say,
say that Corey brought up a good point about in both things we were talking about where does someone like him go for help? But that question remains regardless of these other two stories that we're talking about, Trump stories.
well, Corey, you can go to Texas. Texas is going to have passed one of those first bills this session.
Oh, you're right. There's a bill that passed that said that if an insurance company covers the onboarding procedures, the transition procedures, they now also have to cover any of the sort of follow-up care or reconstruction procedures if you detransition.
I like the way that the representative who is sponsoring this bill discussed it. He said, if I take you to the dance, I'm also responsible to take you home.
That's right.
Yeah.
But not necessarily to have breakfast.
Don't expect to stay over.
Yeah.
Don't, no, I just need to get you
Not
home
to the
safe.
hotel room after the prom.
Although Representative Leach is pretty cute. I would have breakfast with him.
Did any of you go to prom?
Oh, yeah. I went to a number of proms.
Never went to a prom.
School proms or queer proms?
School prom. I got to bring a girlfriend to my all-girls Catholic high school
Wow.
proms and things too. Yeah.
Well, I never went to prom, and I had a very big birthday that happened several years ago that I'm still waiting for my birthday party for. This is an ongoing subject of contention in my marriage, and I wanted to have a prom, and that was vetoed. But
We should totally throw you a prom birthday.
yeah, I think so.
What's the next big one where you should have a prom birthday?
Well, I'm still celebrating the last one. I'm age queer. All right.
Would you bring your spouse as your prom date?
I think so. He'd be a fun date. I'd be
Okay.
fun with him if we weren't married. He'd be my buddy.
Okay, well, speaking of me being able to throw parties, so in Boston, we threw a lecture and then we tried to throw a dinner. And I'm going to use the knowledge of what I learned from doing that, Lisa, to throw you a prom.
Oh, I'll protest.
Get 100 very angry young people and one family of kind of middle-aged parents with their young child, which I don't know, they just looked sad and confused and not committed to being there, and maybe not sure they wanted their child to grow up to be the people screaming. But let's rewind, Jamie. Why don't you set the stage for what happened last Sunday?
So, two organizations and a young D sister set out to host a lecture at MIT. I'm not from Boston, but the representative from Diag, who I think we can say her name because one of the protesters held up a sign with her full legal name on it. She's a realtor, and it said, "Don't buy a house from Evie." Evie works with Diag and with the LGB Courage Coalition.
What Diag is?
Diag is Democrats for an informed approach to gender. And Simon Amaya Prince
Price.
is Price. I always do this. I always want to call him Prince.
He is a prince.
We worked to put together a lecture, And I thought if we're having a lecture, we should probably have dinner afterwards for the speakers and maybe some of those who traveled from a distance to come and listen. And we called it a fundraiser, although I admit we lost money. That's okay. Um, that's how these things go.
Sorry, did you say a fundy racer?
Yes, it was
Okay.
a fun eraser.
Oh,
Um, I thought it went really well. There was disagreement in the lecture, which is exactly what we want to see. There were heretics who spoke. Lisa
And
raises her hand.
I was the one disagreeing more than people. I was mostly me, but Simon asked. So there were four of us. One set of answers came from Jamie and Sarah Stockton, who is also a whistleblower and a
yeah.
psychologist, and the other table was me and Bernadette Broyles, the lawyer who handles a lot of these issues and from a parental rights perspective. And we each answered a series of questions, and we could. I don't know if we want to get into what we talked about. I mean, the main thing is a few protesters came into the building, and not too many though. I did try to engage, but there were several times where I would just say, I wish Corey was here and I wish I could be more like Corey. I was not good at it. I went outside and somebody was wearing a shirt. I said, "What does your shirt stand for?" And he refused to tell me. I was genuinely curious. And then they said, "Would you like a flyer for our event?" So I took the flyer, and it was matched the turf to the quote. And it had a bunch of things we'd said. And then they said that my quotes about autogynephilia were bullying. And I said, "But they're not directed at anyone." And that is not, arguing logic that isn't useful. So that then we got to the next level of what is it, that's not what the problem is. You're killing trans children. So I went back and then they yelled, "Shame, shame, shame." So I went back inside and I felt sad that they weren't listening, because why not engage with these perspectives? And at one point, somebody raised his or her hand, and I don't know the sex or gender identity of this person, but said, "I'm a trans person and I came here and listened and I'm willing to talk." And some of us gave that person a round of applause for being there. So after the event, there was a dinner, and that's where the main protest happened. And I was pretty scared because they could see where we were hanging out in a bar across the street and were kind of staring at us through there. And then they gathered, and there were 3 or 4 times as many protesters as people eating dinner. And some of the things they were screaming at us were just bananas. Like, "We die, they do nothing." Who's we, who's they, who's dying, what's to do, and just worked up into a just complete madness. And I was thinking, well, if people were yelling that at the Reagan administration during the AIDS crisis, that would make a lot of sense. But a bunch of people having discussions about gender identity and how to treat kids with gender issues and how to understand this does not match what was happening outside this restaurant.
I think that there's a. Can I ramble for a second?
Please.
Yes.
I would, first of all, I wish I was there too. That would have been very interesting to see. That completely separately, there was a murder that happened in Washington, D.C. 2 days ago outside of an event at what was it, a Jewish, not a museum necessarily, but some sort of cultural center. And two young people were shot by an assailant who was chanting "Free Palestine." Immediately before and while he was being arrested, he was chanting "Free Palestine." And the news this morning that I saw is that his father was an Iraq War veteran. And this man is, I guess, 31 years old. And I am reminded of how this generation, the millennials and the ones that came up right after, the Gen Z, all of their lived experience of the United States is being in a country that doesn't really seem to have a mission anymore, doesn't really seem to accomplish anything anymore, doesn't seem to be adding anything to the world anymore. It doesn't seem to be a net value. And that this generation has been told its entire life that humans are destroying the planet, that white people are oppressing Black people, that straight people are oppressing gay people, and of course the Jews run everything. And without there being any meaning making that's happening, people will cling to something to make some meaning out of something. And so your point, Lisa, that when men were literally dying of AIDS back in the mid and late 1980s, and the government was not reactive to that at all, then yes, shouting that we're dying would have meant something. But there was something on the line at that point. Like lives were literally on the line at that point. And the ability to try to influence the government to address that loss of life actually was meaningful. But there's almost no meaning. Like this generation has grown up in a land of plenty, and where whether they add anything or not doesn't seem to make any difference at all. And so it doesn't surprise me that a group of people came out to shout these slogans at you, even though if they had reflected for 1 minute on what they were doing there and why they were doing it, it would fall apart. It wouldn't make sense, except that they are there together and doing something, right? So it almost doesn't matter what they're doing, what the cause is, who you are, who their friends are. It matters that they have a sense of participating in something and that they feel like they're making a difference. Nothing else matters.
Yeah, it was like a revival tent. And when we were talking in the panel discussion about, whether or not, quote unquote, gender ideology is being defeated by the Trump administration, one thing that I neglected to say was, my answer to that question was no, because the ideology has a very strong hold. And I think this belief system gives all these young people that sense of meaning that you're talking about, Corey, and it connects them to each other in the struggle, in the fight. They might not have church, they might not play sports, they might not have much in the way of real world community. And there they all were together in one place, united by a common villain, me and Jamie. And you can't defeat an ideology unless you replace it with something. They are beguiled by the idea of gender identity that makes each one of them a god. So, for me, I've had to replace my faith in all of the liberal institutions, right? Like I can't, and I hate sounding like this, but it's hard to trust the New York Times. I can't trust the medical associations, Planned Parenthood, the ACLU. all of that has been destroyed for me, and I would be in a terrible place were it not for the kind of beauty of that, the little heterodox world of Jonathan Haidt's work in the Heterodox Academy, or Braver Angels, which works on depolarization, and it's much slower burn of gratification to be in the viewpoint diversity kind of world. But I think it's worth it in the end. But as I said at the event, what did I say at the event? I said certainty is a warm bath and viewpoint diversity is a cold shower. And so, like, not that many people, a cold shower makes you feel great later, but it's deeply unpleasant while it's happening. And it's hard to go out to a group of people chanting, "We die, they do nothing," and say, "Would you like to sit calmly and exchange perspectives about this and experience the pleasure of having your knowledge grow and no longer considering someone an enemy, and how life affirming that is?" I mean, you can't fit that on a t-shirt.
They were chanting a few other things that were bizarre to me. So they were also chanting that they believe that HRT should be given to them for free.
Yes. That's bizarre to you?
That is bizarre to me.
What are you, some sort of capitalist?
No, but
You aren't?
no, actually I'm not. But the meaning making, the one of the things that I had, okay, so let me take a step back. Lauren and I left the lecture and we went to go get me a coffee, which some people who listen to us regularly will understand why Jamie needed a coffee at 5 p.m. And then we walked over and you could hear them chanting. Lisa, you could hear those chants like from blocks away. I mean, there's maybe what, 150 people there?
I estimated 100 based on nothing, and I see that Julia Turcotti, one of the leaders of the protests, is estimating 150. So,
Okay. I do think we should talk about Julia in a minute. Maybe we should do that first, and then I'll talk a little bit about being an anarchist and really confusing those kids. So I learned who was organizing the protest against us, and it was this trans-identified man named Julie or Julia.
Julia, I think. No, but
Okay.
no young person would choose Julie. Come on. Julia.
Okay. So this individual attends MIT and is something about computers that I could not explain to you if I was under torture. I don't know. They do something with computers. I realized that they were organizing this protest, and I actually reached out to them on Signal and I introduced myself because I want to talk to everybody. I didn't know anything about him ahead of time, and we had some dialogue back and forth.
Yeah, but just sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but he'll probably watch this.
And that's
Well, he'll be upset that you said he. And then he might stop watching.
I
But keep going.
Herm is for.
Keep going. Herm.
I'm gonna we went back and forth on Signal. I initially offered to go get coffee with him. And then I realized that Alejandro Carabella, am I saying that incorrectly?
I hope so.
Okay. He's and here we go again. He put out something on Blue Sky about how we were coming to MIT and that we were all haters or something. And then the death threats started on Blue Sky, the very kind place. Anyway, the offer to go to coffee was initially refused. Then there were death threats, and then it was accepted. And then at that point, those around me said, you can no longer go get coffee with this person
Because of the death
which
threats.
because of the death threats. I guess that makes sense. I think it still would be safe, but it's fine. Um, but we learned later that this individual transitioned not that long ago, right, Lisa?
Well, I I don't know, and we were told something that I don't know is. I mean, we know that I don't know that he is responsible. So somebody told us. So this is just a rumor. I have
Yeah,
not.
this is gossip.
This is gossip. Should we not do it?
I don't know. It's up to you. Do you want to be a gossip? Is it germane?
Yeah, it's germane. It's germane that his either his friend or his girlfriend died at the school he went to before. Somebody in a car accident. Somebody said he was driving the car. I don't know if there's evidence of that. And after that, he transitioned, and there is a picture of him wearing that girl's dress. And so it is possible that the transition is a trauma response of some kind. And back when Jesse Singal wrote about essentially about detransition and ROGD without naming ROGD, and in 2018, he referred kind of obliquely to research which I think had been, or to a quote which had been from Diana Ehrensaft, the kind of godmother of gender affirming care, and that said that some people transition in response to trauma, and maybe sexual abuse. And that was one of the things that was really objected to about Jesse's piece, even though that had been seen. I don't know how well it's been studied. And you do wonder about people's motivations, and maybe that explains the level of vitriol. But wearing your dead friend or girlfriend's dress, transitioning after she dies, and then kind of becoming her, that's a trope I've seen before.
Yeah. What was that movie called?
Psycho.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoa.
No, that is part of, he's wearing his mom's, and other there that's not the only movie where that happens. Yeah, I'm sorry, did we just spoil the end of Psycho for you?
Yes.
Ah, sorry.
That's okay. I don't know that I've ever seen that.
Ah.
So that makes me wonder not just about this individual's motivations. I think that's the word you use, Lisa. The motivations for transition? It also has me really struggle sometimes with understanding how to broach that idea that we're in conflict with someone. I don't want to be in conflict with somebody who is in in their activism out of trauma and out of this
Well,
Corey,
that's ridiculous.
why?
Because everybody that you're in conflict with is in trauma. All of these people who are transitioning and see this as their life raft to escaping their trauma, you're in conflict with them.
I don't, why am I in
Uh-huh.
conflict with them?
Because they're getting on this life raft. They think that they're going to the opposite shore where they can be safe. And what they're really doing is getting on the life raft and going into the shark infested waters with no hope of ever going anywhere. And what you're saying is, you guys don't even jump in the life raft, stay on the boat. And they're saying it's dangerous for us to be on the boat. We need to get on the life raft. And you know that they have a delusion that they're going to get somewhere on the life raft. You know that they're going to be eaten by the sharks. But now the conflict is they want to be on the life raft and you don't want them to be on the life raft.
Not only that, you're walking around with a giant pair of scissors that they think you're going to pierce the life raft with, and you're going to sink them.
And not only that, but you're tossing pots of chum into the life raft and it's getting all over them.
Okay, this metaphor is getting in depth.
But listen, most activism, there's so much activism that comes out of trauma that, mothers against drunk driving. I mean, so much of like, let me take my loss and use it for the greater good and to prevent someone else from having to go through that. I mean, I talked about that at the event, that's what the family acceptance research that it comes out of watching these families that were torn apart by AIDS and thinking there probably was a way, torn apart because the kids were gay and the families weren't accepting, and then they didn't come together until, the young men were dying of AIDS, and this social worker thought they could have been in contact all this time if we had helped them learn to be together. Like it's very normal to try to turn your trauma into activism. And I think that's what the three of us are doing on some level, even though I don't think of myself as an activist. We have all, Corey had something terrible happen to him, and Jamie, you and I participated in what happened to him, what happened to other kids on some level. You worked at the clinic and I reported on it unquestioningly. So we're all here trying to soothe our anxiety, pain, guilt, and shame. But we have really different approaches.
Yep.
Lisa, before you went into the dinner, did you interact or talk to any of the protesters? Or did you try to?
I did a lot of hooping and hollering and when they saying, yes, you get to do this. This is your right. You get
yes.
to protest.
Okay. Yes.
I did
Liberals.
that. I did that.
Corey, do you think that they shouldn't have the right to protest like that?
No, I mean, there's if you're being faced by a pack of wolves, the liberal instinct is to say, our conservation efforts were so great.
They're not a pack of wolves. These are a lot of, they're kids. I see them as kids.
Mm. And you like kids.
I like kids. And
They're adults.
I like the rebel kids. I like the kids who question things, even if they're dumb and they don't know what they're questioning.
Yeah.
I think sometimes kids think that they're questioning gender norms. They think that they're fighting against bigots who want to keep them confined in these, quote, gender rules.
Yes.
I want to talk to all of them, and I want to give a lot of them a big hug and say, you're barking up the wrong tree, but I really admire your spunk.
Well, I can understand why these rebellious children are sympathetic to you, Jamie, because you're sort of a rebel yourself, aren't you? I mean, I read this week that you committed a crime in California, which you should neither admit to or deny, because you have the right under the Fifth Amendment to not be compelled to speak to any crime that you participate. You can't be a witness against yourself. But did you happen to be in a space this week where a recording was being made of a certain session or seminar.
Yes. I was in the space where there was a live stream,
Ah,
a session in the American Psychiatric Association's conference.
I see. What was happening in that space where the live stream was the uh, what would the term be? The secret live stream, the unofficial. That's it. The unofficial live stream.
Okay. So before I say that, I'm going to just say I would be really open to any listeners' suggestions around jet lag and time zone jumping. I am really bad at it. It really messes with me in profound ways, and I
Yes.
don't think there's any way to get around it. But I left Boston where we had our dinner.
All right.
I woke up at 4 a.m. in Boston,
Yeah.
maybe 3:30. Then I got on a plane and flew to Los Angeles.
Yes.
Okay. So Los Angeles was where the American Psychiatric Association's conference was. On Sunday, there was a panel from the, I don't even know, the gender critical side, I guess is how I'll phrase it. There was a panel with Stephen Levine, Chris Kalibi, and Kathleen McDooley.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, that's progress that they even had a panel like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Correct. It is. A couple things that the APA did. So they made it so there was a media blackout on only a few panels. These panels were one of those. They really should have put a media blackout on the really stupid asexual autism diaper fetish panel that occurred before because I
Wait, is there, did that one get broadcast? Where is that?
okay, I'll get to that in 20 seconds.
Okay.
They
Then
put a
we'll wrap
media
up.
Okay, they put a media blackout on the gender panels. Sunday, that panel occurred. Monday was Scott Leibowitz. I'm gonna forget the other name.
Who heads the gender clinic in Columbus, Ohio, I believe.
Headed.
Well, headed. He's
Headed.
left
Oh, he left?
because the law passed in Ohio.
Oh, I see.
And I don't know where he went now. So if anybody actually knows if he's still practicing and where, I'd be really interested to know this. Um, so I flew out to attend that panel. And I got in the room and I sat down and I was minding my own business. First of all, I couldn't find a women's bathroom for 10 minutes, which was super annoying because they had gender neutral stickers up on them and there were urinals and men. I was sitting there waiting for the panel to start, minding my own business, and I hear this man in front of me complaining obnoxiously about the day before's panel. And he was just being annoying. He was acting like he had no idea who was in the rest of the room. He didn't care. Um, but I was in the room. I only flew out for this panel. So I went to the room ahead of time and I happened to catch the trail end of a panel that was on asexuality, autism, and four other A's. Aromantic, agender. What? I caught the tail end of it. It was horrifying. And they did mention diaper fetishes, which yes, it was absurd.
Another time for that one. Yeah.
Yes. But you know, I had no intention of recording anything, but the man in front of me was going on and on complaining about how Segum and Do No Harm are billionaire supported hate groups. And he's just sitting in the room, just running his mouth. And then, yes, somebody did live stream the panel on X. And then
Who was making the complaint?
Just a guy in the audience. Oh, not just a guy in the audience?
yeah, it was a guy in the audience.
But a famous guy?
Yeah, but this is jet lag. This is what's happening to me right now. I'm dropping everyone's names
Okay,
out of
don't
my,
do it. Don't do it.
don't do what? Don't forget everyone's names?
Oh, don't tell. Oh, you're dropping. I thought you were gonna like do the gossip thing. You mean you're
No,
at it?
it was Dan Karasik. That's who
Oh,
was
yeah.
sitting.
Oh, Dan Carras.
A big WPATH guy, the guy who famously at the 2017 US PATH conference presented about a patient with 7 alters, as in multiple personality disorder, who had successful gender nullification surgery. Yes, go on.
So
Go on.
he's sitting in front of me, running his mouth, and I heard him say, I'm an expert witness, and I can't believe that they even let this panel occur. And he's complaining to the people who are about to present on this panel, and he's complaining to the APA's legal advisor woman who was like there as well. He is basically saying all this negative stuff. Why did the panel exist? And she suggested, well, next year we should have a debate. We should just put on an actual debate.
Do they do
And
that?
no, oh no. Michael Myers, who was on the panel I was waiting for,
Michael Myers.
says, I know, what a bad name. He says out loud, no, we should treat them like the APA treated Scientologists. No debate. Don't even listen to him. Don't even engage, was his recommendation. So there is clearly some internal dispute at the APA where some people clearly think that there should be some debate. And what's interesting is the people who are opposed to the debate are not the ones with criticisms of the care model. The ones who want the debate have the criticisms of the care model. The ones that are saying still no debate is those who are going to continue to defend these practices. The panel went on. Leibowitz spoke. Leibowitz, we might actually want to spend some time next time talking about Leibowitz and the quote moderate position he's trying to carve out.
Yes, like Brianna Wu's moderate position.
I think we should talk about, is there a moderate position?
I like that we're like, this care should not exist at all. So zero age. And other people are like, it should be instantly. Wait, I screwed that up. We're like, no children should be affected. In fact, it shouldn't be any earlier than 21 for any of this. And other people are, no, it should be instantly. As soon as they're born, they should be, you should be transing babies. And the moderates are like, let's split the difference and transition 11-year-olds.
Well, I'll have something to say about that since I don't actually advocate for any particular position, but I won't. I think interrogating the moderate position is a great idea.
Yes. So that was what Leibowitz tried to put on. He tried to
Okay.
say, I'm kind of putting on this moderate position. And then he found out that there was a live stream and he got very mad.
How did he find out?
A journalist texted him in the middle of the panel and said, would you like to make a comment about the fact that your panel's being live streamed on X?
Wow, he was checking his phone while he was giving the talk.
Well, no, the other guy was talking at the time and he and then he got really mad and then he told everybody in the audience, stop doing this. And the person who was live streaming did not stop doing it. And it was not me. And then it all ended and they didn't do any Q&A because they talked too long. And then at the very, very end, I got thrown out. So
Why?
Um, I think primarily because everybody in the room thought I was the one who was doing the live stream. But if you were physically in the room and you knew where I was sitting, you would know that it had nothing to do with me because it's not the angle from where I was sitting. So, yeah.
I see.
So did
So they,
come up and like grab you by the arm and what?
no, the legal councilwoman came up and told me that she wanted to go through all of my devices.
And did you tell her to fuck right off?
I did not, but I also had nothing to hide. So I was like, there's nothing on my phone, there's nothing on my computer. But there was, yeah, so I got thrown out. She told me that, well, first she started giving me these weird offers. Like, if you delete everything on your phone from today, then I'm still going to take your badge, but you maybe could come back in the future.
Oh, so are you permanently banned?
I don't know. She took my badge, but then I don't know.
Yeah.
But I
Do you mind if I just make a comment here? It's not specifically about you or this particular event, but it's for everybody who might be watching this to figure out what's next. And I just want to give you my complete assurance, my complete attention, not my co-hosts.
there's a huge lead up here. Just spit it
You
out.
people, every time that you all meet to talk about this stuff from here forever, we will have moles in the room. We will find out everything that you say, everything, everything that you write down is going to come out. More and more whistleblowers are going to reveal all of the transcripts from it, and it's been like this for the last 2 or 3 years. We have all of the information. You will never be able to conspire to bring these types of treatments and inflict them on children ever again without everybody knowing every detail that you're planning. We will be there. I promise you, I guarantee you.
Oh, whoa. I don't know what spy network you belong to, but
I know.
there's a job for me there. Okay, well, I think we should wrap up because it's been
Yes,
going on a long time and
we
we
should do
solved all the problems.
our non-gender items.
Oh, non-gender items. What do you two have? What are your non-gender recommendations for the week?
Looking around desperately.
Tennis?
Oh no, I know mine.
Go, Jamie.
Gardening.
Oh, dang it. I was going to use that one.
No, you weren't. Um, I I came back yesterday. Oh, so I flew to Los Angeles, then I flew back to the East Coast for a full day custody hearing. That's why I'm uberly jet lagged, and then I flew back to the Midwest yesterday. But my thing to do when I need to be mindless and just decompress is I just love doing yard work and being out in my garden. And I was amused because two people yesterday tried to come up and sell me lawn mowing services. And I was like, this is like my favorite thing I do all week. No, please go away. I'm not paying somebody to do something that I absolutely love to do. So that's one of my favorite things to do.
It's just like weeding.
Oh my God, weeding is amazing because you
Yeah.
know what it is? I feel like I have no control, right? I've given up the illusion that I have control over anything.
Okay.
Okay. I have 5 children, my career, I've lost my career. I don't have any, I
Yeah.
have no control. But it's like that moment where I feel like I can pull this weed out and I can let the flower that I want to grow bigger have room and strength. And it just gives me this sense that I have some kind of control or power over something, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what you really need is a weed planting service.
Well, I can do that. I have a brown thumb. So
Yes, that's my thing. I love being in the garden.
Corey?
Oh, I was I was gonna say gardening, but now I feel like I can't.
You can
I planted some milkweed.
Wait,
Well,
you really do garden?
well,
I
you
have
wouldn't
milkweed.
you wouldn't say that I garden if you looked at the state of my yard. But we've had very cool temperatures here. Otherwise, I would be out there. I need to do something to do some weed control because it's getting really, really bad. But I've been spending more time outdoors trying to get my house looking at like a little bit more respectable. That's all.
Are you trying to sell it or you just want to have it nicer to live in?
I want to look at it and not feel shame.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
I can't remember if I recommended already this discussion between Richard Rushfield and Megan Daum, my favorite writer and person. Richard Rushfield has a site called The Ankler, which is like an insider Hollywood site. And I went to college with him and he hired me once to follow him around with a video camera.
Right. You mentioned that.
I did? Okay. So I don't know if we linked to that last week. So my other thing was this morning I had coffee and my husband had brought home some tiramisu from his some work event yesterday, and I just skimmed a little of the mascarpone off the top with the cocoa and put it in my coffee. So that's my recommendation.
Oh my God, tiramisu is my favorite dessert.
Just like a little, he was very skeptical, but I'm going to recommend it as something to bring pleasure, since apparently I've already recommended this hilarious conversation. So next time we'll solve whatever problems we didn't get to. What should we say?
Moderate.
We have a weekly newsletter written by Ben Appel that goes out for paid subscribers with a roundup of the week's gender news. You can find us at, what is it? informeddissentpodcast.substack.com. I feel like we have an email too, but I don't know what it is.
We love and read all of the comments, and we really I actually read all of them, and I love that you all are starting to have discussions amongst each other too. I think that's really brilliant.
So thank you, and see you all next time.
That was my job, Lisa.
Oh, you do it.
So thank you all and see you all next time.
Bye.